And thanks for joining us. I'm Kaylee Chella. Despite staying below zero all day, some people are still braving the cold to run errands before the overnight deep freeze sets in. Let's begin by checking in with our chief meteorologist, Hutch Johnson, to find out just how bad it's going to get. Hutch?
Kaylee, thanks so much. We have a lot of weather to talk about, and our first thing that we're turning our attention to is the cold that's been with us all day. Now, we are starting to see a warm up out to the west, but we are continuing with our first alert weather day on this Thursday for the Arctic cold. Many of us have spent the entire day sub-zero, including us here in the Fargo area. The wind is going to be picking up and temperatures dropping early, so we will still see 25 to as cold as 40 below wind chills in the early evening. As the south winds really get to smoking overnight, we're going to see temperatures begin rising, but that's going to cause some areas of blowing snow, possibly some icy roads out there as well with those gusts. So we'll be watching for those things. Temperatures now in those single digits below zero in the Red River Valley. We have warmed up to zero in Detroit Lakes, and it's 3 above out in Jamestown. Factor in the wind, and we do have wind chills still between 15 and 30 below right now in and around Grand Forks. We have that wind chill advisory. It's in effect until 3 in the morning, and by morning we're anticipating even more change. Tomorrow has been declared a first alert weather day for snow and wind. We'll go over that in a moment, but for tonight, we'll see temperatures that'll be cold, but in the late overnight hours, mainly after that 10 o'clock hour, we'll see temperatures slowly start to rise. Likewise, Grand Forks dipping down early with rising temperatures overnight. Snow for some of us by daybreak. Your hour-by-hour forecast for a first alert weather day on Friday here in a minute.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Hutch. Well, we do have new information this afternoon in the search for a missing 26-year-old with ties to the valley. Human remains were found today during the search for Caitlin Berry. We don't know who they belong to yet, but further search efforts have been suspended. Berry was last seen on December 21st at her home near Sidney, Montana, which is about an hour from Williston. Berry does have ties to Grand Forks as her mother is a city prosecutor there. Investigators are working to find the cause of a shop fire that destroyed a building near Buffalo, North Dakota. It started around 10:30 last night. Fire crews from both Buffalo and Castleton fought the flames. Fortunately, no one was inside the shop at the time. An apartment fire in Fergus Falls appears to have started on a stove. It happened yesterday at 1515 College Way. The fire chief says 2 of the 3 people inside at the time are now being treated at a Twin Cities hospital. Their conditions are still unknown. 2 pets were killed in that fire. Overnight, fire crews returned to a Moorhead home that had been extensively damaged by fire earlier this week. But this is video from Tuesday when the garage first caught fire. Fire crews returned to the home on 22nd Avenue South after the homeowner noticed a new smoky smell. Fire crews found beams in the attic that were still smoldering and quickly extinguished them. This week's fire damage is estimated to be around $100,000. Jury selection is underway in the federal trial for 3 former Minneapolis police officers charged with violating George Floyd's constitutional rights. All 3 are charged with depriving Floyd of his civil rights while acting under government authority. They're also charged in state court with aiding and abetting both murder and manslaughter. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry and interim police chief Amelia Huff are discussing priorities for the city's police department and violent crime. Earlier today, they addressed the city's continued response to violent crime and the ongoing work to recruit what they're calling community-minded officers.
Policing is a sacred trust, a pledge by each of us to care for and safeguard the members of this community. That's the why at the heart of everything we do. Every decision we make on every call, every case, and every interaction. What we do is to consistently provide professional police service.
That's the hope. Hundreds of the city's law enforcement officers retired or quit following George Floyd's murder, and crime rates remain high. City officials reported 96 homicides in 2021 and more than 2,000 robberies. That's compared to 46 homicides and less than 1,300 robberies in 2019. North Dakota State Representative Rick Becker from Bismarck says he's retiring at the end of the year. Becker says his family, businesses, and other obligations have had him contemplating retirement for about a year. He served in the North Dakota House since 2013. Well, today marks the first anniversary of President Biden being sworn into office. Though his first 12 months were marked with some highs, like passage of the bipartisan infrastructure package, he faces major challenges from the COVID pandemic to congressional gridlock. Natalie Brand has our story.
Let me start by first saying
President Biden marked 1 year in office by focusing on his biggest legislative win to date, the bipartisan physical infrastructure law.
we demonstrated that Democrats and Republicans can actually work together to get something done.
Though some of his biggest priorities remain stalled, from voting rights to his massive social and climate spending plan.
We're going to have to probably break it up.
Democrats really need to scale back the ambitions that they had.
George Washington University professor Laura Brown notes the president has had major wins, like the American Rescue Plan COVID relief package, but also setbacks, from the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal to current Russia-Ukraine tensions and a spike in inflation.
What really has, I think, bedeviled President Biden is a lack of consistency on the issues that Americans care the most about.
Recent CBS News polling shows a dip in approval ratings.
Polls go up and down, but we have to remain consistent in fighting for the American people and their needs.
Republicans have seized on the low ratings as they try to win back control of Congress this November.
What the election this fall is going to be about is about this administration and how it's doing.
I tell my Republican friends, here I come. What are you for?
The president has vowed to travel more this year and engage with the American public on his policies. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, the White House.
President Biden also indicated to reporters this week that he does plan to run for re-election in 2024 with Vice President Harris as his running mate. And as mentioned, NBC News poll shows President Biden has lower than average approval ratings. Biden's overall job approval rating stands at 43%, while 54% disapprove. Those numbers are essentially the same as they were in October, but they do indicate a 10-point drop in approval ratings over his first year in office. Democrats on Capitol Hill are trying to figure out what's next after suffering a major setback. Their landmark voting rights bill failed in the Senate last night. The vote came after hours of passionate speeches from both sides of the aisle. President Biden says he's profoundly disappointed that the United States Senate has failed to stand up for our democracy. The Great Resignation has caused an exodus of people moving to new employers, as well as older workers leaving the labor market entirely. A record 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs in November, and a recent LinkedIn survey shows this Great Resignation will likely continue. Here in the Valley, Core counts as a business that can help employers strategize how to create a less stressful work environment by re-inspiring and re-engaging their teams.
Act on a core values and a set of behaviors and beliefs that really, again, inspires the people in the company to produce the results you're wanting, and not just let what you want to produce drive your culture. There's a huge difference in that.
In addition to culture, people are asking for fair pay. According to a new survey, employers are expected to boost employee pay by 3.4% on average this year. That's faster wage growth than the previous 2 years, and it comes as employers are competing for talent in a tight labor market. Career expert Catherine Fisher says if you think you're ready to make a change, start the conversation with your current boss.
And before just jumping ship, talk to your manager and say, this is what I need from my job and the company. Are you able to deliver this? And if the answer is no, start looking. But again, look more for the companies and their culture, because right now those companies are focusing on culture.
Meanwhile, the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits surged last week to the highest level since October. That's according to the Labor Department. First-time filings for weekly jobless claims rose by 55,000 to 286,000. That was more than expected. The spike comes amid an ongoing surge in COVID cases. A statue of President Theodore Roosevelt has been removed from outside New York City's American Museum of Natural History. It features Roosevelt on horseback with a Native American and African figure on either side of him. The monument had long drawn accusations of racism, and in 2020, the museum requested its removal following the killing of George Floyd. The statue is being moved to the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library right here in North Dakota.